Welcome to this next episode of the Beloved Miracles Couples Project. Today we are reaching from Norway to Dallas, Texas, USA. Hello, Jason Majoue.
Hey, what's up, Tim? Appreciate you. Thank you for having me out here.
Absolutely. Let me introduce you. Jason is partner of a marketing agency where he and his team work with professionals, thought leaders, coaches, realtors, and agents who offer high-ticket products, services, and courses by leveraging the power of video marketing on the world's second largest search engine, YouTube. In fact, we're broadcasting on YouTube right now. However, this was not how his path started. Jason, where does your story begin?
Thank you for that beautiful introduction there, Tim. I appreciate you, and everyone that you want to pay close attention and take out notes here, because I've got some interesting things that I'm going to share with you as you pay attention to this story, and things that can help you, whether you are a coupled or a married couple, or you are someone that's got a business partner, or you've gone through lots of different trials and tribulations in your life, or you're struggling in business, or you're struggling to make ends meet. I can touch upon each of those things that can help each of you in those areas. Now, where my story and journey began, Tim? Well, it started off with my situation where I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, hence the interesting last name, Maw-Shoe-way is how that went. And then right now I'm currently in Dallas, Texas. But when my situation changed is I went through different things in my childhood and whatnot. But for this part of the story that I want to share with everyone is something that I shared in my introduction here, which was about my journey was a rough journey in the beginning, and I think that's part of what helped me grow to the person who I am now today, because I literally had to rise up from the ashes from a home and business fire where I lost everything almost, including my life, and it was not a happy sight. It was very traumatic. I went through some serious hardships, but it really kind of taught me to, after I was like in a Target with just boxer shorts and a towel over my neck, and that was all that I had after that point. That was a super humiliating and humbling experience at the same time, but also a big wake-up experience that I had to just be grateful for the base level of what I had, which was minus everything out except just myself. And so I came to that realization. I was like, hey, it's just me. I've been blessed to just be alive from all that. And even though I was left with over $100,000 in debt for the leftovers of that, it was really like, I had to learn how to rise literally from the crisis above that. And that's where I started turning my journey into personal development and learning how to just kind of, jump is what they say. And when it comes to success, I've heard from a lot of entrepreneurs who say, you need to jump. And then as you fall down that cliff, you got to start spreading your wings and start flying. And that's what I had to do, because I had to do some serious jumping after that point, because I wasn't going to try to jump and commit suicide, but I was going to try to jump to rise above the situation and change my mindset, change the way that I'm going to do things, my work ethic, and many other things, just to kind of rise from that. Because when you've got that much debt hanging over your head and you've lost everything, you've really got to do something. And for me, it's like, hey, there's nowhere to go except up for me, And that's how I had to rise up from the ashes there. And then at that point, I decided to switch up my career choice of, take a little bit of break from business, but still keep the business mindset hat on to help me in other things that I pursued. And so therefore I went, long story short, in between that period of time, I decided to go to Japan and, pick up the language. I was there for about a good 5 years, and I worked at different companies like Apple and, business consulting and many other things. And it was just really cool to pick up the experience, but also take some of the experiences that I learned from working from different cultures when I went on different business trips and traveled to different countries in addition to Japan. And, it was really insightful on how different people think versus how people in America think versus, the way we think in our languages. And as you know as well, Tim, you see how things are in Norway there, correct? And, there's a different culture, different language, different mindset versus, America or UK or any Asia, whatever. And so you really have to keep all those things in mind, and it can really help you and how you deal with your relationships with your wife or your girlfriend or your partner, and even in business. And so I will be getting into that next here, but I did want to say that, that rising up the crisis was definitely a good foundation kind of helped me become more the person that helped me with my work ethic and other things, and how I treat the person that was my significant other, which eventually later on, as I went through that career change, I did get back into business. I did get into learning around to surround mentors around me, right? And it was really important because a lot of people forget to think this. You have to really be humble and learn how to surround yourself with mentors so you can be guided in that right way. And it was during that time where I had to like learn how to, start get really fast at building up new relationships, because once you move to another country, you got to like start all over again. And so at that time, while I was working on my personal development and working on my Japanese and business skill sets and thinking about getting back into business and surrounding myself with mentors, I also, used the internet to, get into like networking events and meetup events and things like that, where I can get to know people in a natural setting, not dance clubs, but not like, go picking up women on the street or anything like that. But I went into some different meetups, and, I made a really good friend at some of these meetups, and that happened to become my best friend over time. Eventually that became my wife, and she's native Japanese to Japan. And eventually we were over there for that time while I was out there for the 5 years. And then eventually we moved to Dallas, Texas, where my relatives eventually moved to, and I started working over here. But it was just awesome to use that power of the internet and be married to somebody who was my best friend, and learn how to use what I've learned from personal development as well as the way I do things in business to help me also in my relationship with communication and getting that understanding for support and things like that. And then to top it off, when you move to another country with your wife, who's mainly been used to living in Japan all her life, and then coming to Japan and having to compromise, and that's what big thing that we talk about in relationships is compromise and learning how to have that communication, right? And so, that's kind of where I went next, was going from there to, really learning how to work in the relationship, but also I wanted to start getting back into business after I'd done several things working for Apple and being a business consultant, things like that. I wanted to start getting back into business, and that's where I started looking online. But I also had to learn how to get the support of my wife, who saw that I was trying to bring out that entrepreneurial tendency that I had originally with my first business that, burned down literally, and bring that back, but also still get the support of my wife, but also still keep things in harmony, since we were living in another country that she had not been used to. So it was a definitely big challenge there. So yeah, I just wanted to touch upon that as well. So if you have any questions about this part, I'd love to expand on certain parts.
Listening to you, it sounds like there were systems on top of systems on top of systems, right?
Yes, absolutely.
One system you mentioned was mentorship. I'm assuming that showed up as a system for you. Is that correct? Mentorship?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct, Tim. Yes.
Can you say any more about that? And obviously it changed a lot, including uniting with your wife, and what you're developing now continues to implement systems. But I'm curious about the root of it. Like, if we looked at this word system as a seed, where did it like first sprout into your awareness that you were operating and implementing systems?
Absolutely. I think it started where, having seen how my mother was, having a system where, my parents divorced when I was a child, I had to see how my mom had a system of how she was basically working a full-time job and also having a system of making sure that her children are getting raised correctly, and also helping teach them with a system to become self-reliant. So that was that first foundation system. And so learning that self-reliant mindset, I had to learn how to go, okay, well, how are other people able to make money at a young age? So I started watching what other people were doing. So I saw and watched that system. And then that system built onto from there. And as I started talking about mentors and business, I started seeing how are they leading their life? How are they balancing their life, their business, their relationship with their wife? How do they get the support of their wife? And I think a big thing for me with the system, support system when it comes to wife and business and things like that is just having that straight communication talk and letting them know with confidence what you're really going to do with clarity. How are you going to do it? And then showing consistency, because I think that's a huge piece that a lot of people miss, is they say all these awesome dreams to their wife or their husband, but then if they're not showing through their actions to their wife or their husband or even their business partner, then that does create a lot of friction and a lot of kind of wondering if their partner or their wife or husband or whatever is really going to be able to follow through and help that person feel comfortable. Because on the other side, if you got to look at it from the other side, what about that worried wife or husband who's looking at you following the system, but if you're not following the system correctly to show that consistent and keeping that harmony of life balance and love and business and following through and bringing in income and things like that, then it starts to crumble or fall apart. And it's hard for that other significant other to support that other person when you're not following through with consistency and being persistent and taking those actions and things like that. And so I think that's a huge piece in bringing about that support from your significant other and letting them know that, hey, the only way I'm going to make this happen is if I do these things, but I also need your help equally as well. Whether you want to do this business with me or you want to support me in other roles around everything in our lifestyle to help me make sure that I succeed, which in turn helps you as well, then that's how it's going to work. And you have to just really have that straight talk with them and then start following through those actions. And I think also kind of a weekly inventory check of our mental and spiritual and health about how are we doing as a married couple or a couple, how are we doing in my actions that I said that I promised to you to help make things better for our family? Are we progressing or are we retrogressing? You know, I think that's really important to have those check-ins instead of letting things fester or not letting things begin. And I think it's important to show the wins, celebrate the small wins along the way so that they see that progress and the action that's coming from you so that the support increases more and more.
Yeah.
So I think that's some things there, yeah.
And it's great how you rooted it, right? In your heritage in New Orleans, right? Louisiana, and through your mama of all people, right? When mama's happy, the whole house is happy, right? That you recognize that there were systems running there that mom could do all that a mom does, and that built, right? That built to the next and to the next, including a clearing out, right? Which is a really profound thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, I could go on and on, right? I mean, sometimes I even dream of having an experience like you've had, right? Because every time I move, I realize how much more stuff I have than I need. And it's a crazy thing, right? Where sometimes I wish I would have a fire to just like wipe it all out. But your story of it has me reconsidering that because that's really dramatic and traumatic. In terms of looking at couples again, mm-hmm. What specific advice, in addition to what you've already given, would you consider is significant and important for couples that are building together?
I think it's really important. Number one, communication is super key. Having that consistent communication so that there's no kind of misunderstandings, whether it be language barrier related or whether there's kind of like misunderstandings about how we're going to do things as business and setting time aside for fun things and making sure that you do a consistent, because whenever you get married, whether it's husband or wife or partner or whatever, you have that kind of strong commitment. And I think that's really comes down to is communication and commitment and consistency. Because if you don't have those 3 C's in that way, then you're not really going to get that far in your relationship, because you have to have that time where, when you celebrate those wins of, spending that time with your wife or your husband or whatever, that's super important because they're going to feel the love from you. If they're not feeling the love, you're just all business only while you're following a system, or even if you're in a job and you're following that type of system, then, things will crumble. But if you do the opposite of that and you are following through with consistency, commitment, and communication, like I was talking about earlier, then the support goes up, the love goes up, the balance goes up, things that you can do together, celebrating those wins along the way, like I mentioned. And then also it's really important that you kind of always want to remember the way that you treated your wife or your husband when you first were courting them and making them feel good about you, and almost like an interview process, showing your best side. You got to keep reminding yourself to change it up and remember that time that you treated them with those flowers or those candies or those special things that you did for them, and continue to do that along the way. One of the things that I love about my wife is we've been married for 10 years now, but a lot of people look at us like, wow, you guys look like you're newlyweds. It's because of the way that we treat each other every day, and we give lots of gratitude to each other. And this is a little small thing, but it goes a long way over the 10 years, no matter whether you're doing what you're, for business or what your wife or husband does for cooking or cleaning around the home. those are all things that help you keep organized as a family in a functional unit. And you have to have that foundation of giving also gratitude to your wife or husband for, the things that they do for you. My wife is awesome at making, different delicious food. I always appreciate and share that with her every time she puts all that hard work into the kitchen, or cleaning, or cooking all her meals and things like that, or help taking us around for different things. I think every small thing that is appreciated, that goes a long way. They remember that stuff, and I think it's also it makes them motivated to want to help you more when you're showing that appreciation and you're having that mindset that you treated them the way that you had when you originally started courting them or dating them or whatnot. And I think that's really important to keep that fire alive, so that you have that long-term destiny of happiness with them, right? And I think that's just really important, because if you're not being, that dominant figure to show that you're confident and you can be a leader and provider for the family, then things can crumble. But you also want to have that humility to allow them to have their space and gain their power, so that they feel like they've got a power in the family, and it's not just you dominating 100%. It has to be a balance there, because I think all of us, we want to grow as human beings, but we also have to remember our personality types too. And I think that's another key piece, is understanding each other's personality types, whether you do it things like off a Myers-Briggs system, or you do it based off of like color gem systems. For example, if you have somebody who's kind of like, maybe kind of more of a pearl yellow personality, where they're thinking about, they really love to they're really caring and wanting to save the world, and they have a really just tender heart, and they love to just always serve and help others. The way that you talk to that type of personality type, if that's one of their dominant traits, compared to the way you talk to a really ambitious, power-hungry person, very different. So that's all that type of stuff where learning how to talk to people, whether it's your husband or wife or people in business, is super, super important, because it can get you dramatically different results as part of your influence in your relationship as well. So I think that's another big key as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of richness in that, right? I mean, we're both in a cross-cultural marriage. My marriage likewise is about 10 years now, about a decade. And there's a lot to appreciate and understand of what you're mentioning here in terms of the communication and the consistency and the just the gratitude. I mean, you really hit it with that word for me. And in fact, we're going to share a link associated with this to an accountability gratitude group that we have on Facebook that is emphasizing exactly what you said, right? The significance of recognizing something every day, as small as it could be or as big as it could be, and especially in a partnership, what we're grateful for, that we can build upon that, even in the hardest of times. So the last distinction that I think you could really shed light on, Jason, is the distinction, because you're in a business partnership.
Correct.
In addition to your marriage partnership. Is there any different advice that applies in a business partnership compared to what you've primarily emphasized so far of your marriage?
I think a lot of the same principles apply even to a business partnership, and it's interesting because I have this proven experience in a 10-year successful marriage. I've applied a lot of those principles to make sure that I'm always having that inventory check with my business partner, so that we're always keeping each other accountable. And I think that's a big piece of it, is that accountability, holding each other accountable, and not being scared to give each other feedback for improvement for the company, improvement for ourselves, and then having the humility to also be able to receive the feedback correctly without getting so defensive, but without immediately wanting to quit, and just kind of make sure that you're always in sync with your goals. Because if you're not in sync with your goals and in sync in receiving and giving feedback, positive feedback, and feedback improvement, then you're not going to grow as a person. You're not going to grow as a partnership, and you will stagnate and you may fail. But if you go the opposite direction, you will succeed if you do those things, and that's what's going to really help your business partnership go a lot further. And I think it's also really important to kind of get to know, almost like a courtship or dating with your thing. If you're thinking about getting a partnership with them, really get to know that person, see how they act in different situations. But even if you did rush into a partnership and you already currently won, and you're still not sure, really start to kind of look at how they react to different situations. Even different games can be seen as how they would react and treat teamwork, how they would treat things from a management standpoint? How would they treat things from a leadership standpoint? All those things, you can look at them in different situations, just like when you're on a date with a woman or a guy and you are, doing different things. They're watching you. They're watching to see, did you get upset when something happened and fell on the floor? Did you get upset when the waiter didn't come onto your table on time? How did you react when certain people were acting a certain way around you in the group? How do you act when you're around a big group of people? Do you, surprise the crowd? Do you kind of just forget about your significant other? What are types of things that you're doing to show that you are caring in that relationship and then trying to make it grow and become better so that your company succeeds or your relationship succeeds more? And I think a lot of those principles definitely do apply even in a business, and then just topping it off on that and just making sure there's a lot of accountability there.
I love it. I love it. Right. Yeah. And we need to be able to measure it in some way. It's not a nebulous feel good kind of thing, right? Just as in a business, we need to be able to monitor the numbers. In a couple partnership where love is involved, we need to have some reference point, don't we, of progression, or even the dance of it. I like the reference, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? I mean, it's not always a linear process. It's much more circular. And then another nice distinction came to mind in what you just said, right? This difference between a bond of love and then understanding the bond of logistics. And I think that's highlighted as well nicely by your comparison of your marriage to a business partnership. And I've certainly learned that in my marriage, that love and logistics are not the same thing. It's wonderful when love is there, but when a job's got to get done, the ability to work together, as you say, communicate, be accountable, follow up, follow through, be sensitive, as you said, to the differences of personality style. I really appreciate, Jason, all that you've emphasized here, because I think it reminds all of us, which I've learned myself the hard way, logistics is not necessarily taken care of by love.
Exactly. Yep, you got to have balance of each of those things. It totally makes all the difference in the world for how you do your business. And how you do one thing is how you do everything, is what I've come to understand over time as well.
Brilliant. Well, with that, I say together we overcome. And you've really done a nice job of sharing your story in a way that helps me say that, right? That literally working together in this interview, we've been able to capture these insights as you are in your marriage, my marriage, and in a business partnership, that together we have an opportunity to overcome things in a way far beyond what any one of us alone can do.
Exactly. Then thank you. I appreciate you so much. And I'm looking forward to sharing more value and looking forward to, really helping people succeed and see their journey and how they're doing things. It's just an awesome community what you have here. Appreciate you, Tim.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, we'll be in touch and look forward to doing some more of this again in the future. For now, goodbye from Norway.
Take care, guys.